Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Lisa Reichert. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Career and Professional Development Lead within the People and Organization Development team, part of UC Berkeley People and Culture. And I hope that your fall semester is going well. Wow, it's nearing the end, and I hope that throughout the semester that you have had some fun and engaging conversations. I see through the shares that there have been some good, effective conversations. And of course, we all have those times where conversations don't always go as we had planned, whether that's on our end or another person's end or some mysterious space in between. And that's why I am very excited about today's session, Communicating with Impact, Leadership Through Conversation, presented by Nicole Lenzen. Nicole is a coach, facilitator, and consultant who helps individuals and teams navigate leadership, career development, and working parenthood. She partners with people leaders to create thriving workplace cultures built on connection and trust. And with a background in innovation and product development, Nicole has led multidisciplinary teams through complex digital and organizational transformation initiatives across Fortune 500 companies, startups, and nonprofits. Nicole is an International Coaching Federation Associate Certified Coach. She is a certified integral coach, a certified retain parental leave coach, and holds a BS in computer science and certifications in design thinking and facilitation. And Nicole has also been a coach in connection with our NOW conference. So thank you, Nicole, for all of your support of UC staff and for being here today to share how we can communicate with impact. So the room is all yours.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm so excited to see so many folks in the session. So, yeah, I really appreciate everybody's examples that you dropped in the chat. I'm seeing some really good themes that we're probably going to hit on today. So welcome. And with that, maybe we'll start with some goals for today. So, like a lot of personal and professional development, today is really about increasing awareness. So, self-awareness. How do we show up to conversations? Awareness around others. How do other people show up to conversations? And through this understanding, we'll look at some different frameworks and tools to help us enable more powerful conversations. And we'll focus today with a professional lens, but a lot of what we're talking about is applicable to personal conversations as well. So, feel free to use what we talk about in any capacity in your life or career. So, as Lisa mentioned earlier, why is this important? Well, because I've pretty much met very few people who naturally enjoy and thrive in navigating difficult conversations, whether that's like advocating for yourself or generating influence. I certainly haven't been one of those people. But the good news is that we can learn and we can practice, and really that's what today's all about. So before we dig in, I just wanted to explore a question that's pretty fundamental to, the topic at hand. What is a conversation? Does anybody have any thoughts? Want to drop in the chat or go off mute? No right or wrong answers here. Anybody? That's okay. Well, I'll share.
We had somebody share, Nicole.
Oh, we did. Oh,
exchange of
perfect.
information, exchange of ideas, sharing of ideas.
Yeah, I love this. I love the word exchange. I love the word sharing. I love the word ideas, information, listening, learning, back and forth, multiple ways, speaking, listening, back and forth. Yeah, this is all perfect. Thank you for sharing. So I'll kick off with this quote from Theodore Zeldin, he's in his 90s. He's still alive and practicing. He's a Palestinian British academic, historian, and author, and his work has been centered on humanity, people's relationships with work and with each other, and has focused a lot on conversation. And I like this quote because it just pulls in some of these elements that we've, started to raise in the chat. It's a meeting of minds with different memories and habits, And he explains that when minds meet, they don't just exchange facts, but they actually transform them. They reshape them, they draw different implications from them, and they engage in new trains of thought. So conversation doesn't just reshuffle the cards, it actually creates new cards, which I felt was really powerful because we can ascertain that not only are conversations, including two or more minds or people who intrinsically have different backgrounds and lived experiences and ways of communicating for one another, as we all do, but also he's highlighting the power and the potential of conversation, particularly the impact on and between the folks engaged with them. And so, what does that look like? A lot of what you've already shared in the chat. It's a dynamic exchange. Understanding and meaning is co-created in an ideal world. So, referencing that two-way back and forth. Conversation implies words and language, but as a lot of you have pointed out, it also involves listening and also nonverbal communication. And as we know, at work especially, conversations can happen in a variety of settings. So it could be formal, informal, in a meeting, a one-on-one, passing somebody in the hall. So there's a lot of opportunities. And we're in a virtual world, so it's a little bit different these days, but regardless, it's good to just think of different scenarios in which conversations can happen. It's not always going to be the same, cut and dry. And hitting on what Theodore Zeldin mentioned, conversations are really powerful because they're actually vehicles for progress. So being able to communicate well is really important in a professional setting if we care about moving things forward and not staying stagnant, which could mean addressing a challenge that's arising, not repeating a specific pattern that has happened within a specific department, or just thinking about the future and taking actionable steps to get there. And we'll dig into different conversation types in a little bit more deeply. But just want to level set there. Appreciate all of your input. So what are we going to do today? We'll quickly talk through some workshop guidelines, just to make sure this feels like a safe, supportive, and productive space for everybody. We're then going to dig into 3 different conversation types, 4 communication styles, and how they shape dynamics and outcomes at work. We're then going to apply a practical framework to prepare for a real world conversation that you have, ideally happening at work or in life coming up soon. And just to let you know, throughout the session today, we're going to intersperse the slides and content with some polls just to kind of gauge the room how everybody feels in terms of where they sit when it comes to conversation types and communication styles. We are also going to have breakout sessions. They are optional. However, I would really encourage folks to jump in and engage because, as we discussed, conversations are dynamic exchanges, and the only way that we can improve is to practice. And hopefully this is a low stakes, low risk environment to do so. Also, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat throughout. If we have, and hopefully they'll be applicable to everybody, and we can shoot a quick answer out. If it requires more in-depth conversation, we can either cover them at the end if we have more time, or I'm happy to follow up with folks after the session. All right. So some quick workshop guidelines. Really today, we're just about showing up authentically. So it's not about perfection. It's not about nailing it. It's really just practicing, experimenting, and learning. And so again, as much as you're able to participate, the more you'll get out of it and the more everybody else will get out of learning from you. If you can put your camera on, that's helpful, but definitely understand that not everybody's in a place or situation where they can. Of course, we want to be inclusive, and if somebody's being vulnerable and sharing something, we don't want to judge them. We want to be open-minded and supportive. Also, in group coaching, we talk about how learnings can leave the room, but the specific stories and the people involved in them, those details stay. So we want to just keep that private. And as always, stretch out of your comfort zone if you can. Conversations can be challenging, and the whole point of this is to kind of take baby steps towards making them easier. Is there anything else that anybody would add in terms of what would make this a safe, supportive space for you? All right, well, feel free to drop in the chat if something comes to mind. If not, then we'll go ahead and jump in. So we're going to start talking about 3 different types of conversations, with the first one being around connection. So the intent here is building relationship. So an example might be taking a new colleague out to lunch. And so what does this require to have a successful connection conversation? Requires listening, trying to find common interest, being present, not bringing an agenda. And pitfalls to avoid would be, dominating the conversation or being bringing too much self-interest or, reacting or bringing negative judgment or just plain getting distracted and not paying attention. So this is pretty fundamental for the way that we operate. However, sometimes this can be neglected or not prioritized when it comes to work, and things can just move forward without this happening. So this can feel very foundational, but also skipped over, unfortunately, sometimes. Next conversation type is around possibility. So within this, it's really about exploring options. So an example might be a brainstorming session where folks are coming up with a bunch of ideas, not really knowing yet where they're going to go, but just exploring possibilities. So what does this require from a mindset perspective? An openness, listening for what's missing, questioning assumptions, and what might get in the way. Well, if folks aren't really all interested in the topic, or somebody's really rushing to get to an answer or make a decision, or just bringing a closed-mindedness and thinking about the constraints and barriers before every option's kind of explored. Also, this can be uncomfortable for people who don't really like uncertainty or ambiguity. This is more of a divergent type of conversation as opposed to convergent. So it's nice to just kind of recognize, okay, is this easy for me or is it challenging for me? And then the third conversation type is around action. So this is really about coordinating activities, completing tasks, moving things along. For an example, might be a weekly status update meeting. So you're seeing where you are in terms of meeting deliverables or milestones, you're checking in on what might the blockers be, you're moving things forward. What does it require? Clear requests, agreements, expectations. And as you can imagine, when this goes awry is when you're kind of in a gray zone. Like nobody really understands what the takeaway is or what they're supposed to do. There's not clarity, there's no accuracy, people aren't committing. And so things stall or get fuzzy. So in thinking about all of these conversation types, you might be wondering, well, do each of these need to be held as separate, distinct discussions, or can they all kind of take place in one conversation? And I'll just introduce a few different perspectives on that. So one is that, as I kind of alluded to earlier, each of these conversations requires a different type mindset. And so often it can be useful to separate them because sometimes people need time to process what came out of the dialogue, and not necessarily muddy the water by, shifting between all of these different mindset types. And that may mean like having a shorter session with a clear intent. Also, some people might not feel comfortable moving directly to one type of conversation without having another type before. So, for example, I kind of alluded to earlier that, sometimes connection is skipped over, but someone may actually really appreciate getting to know and developing trust with somebody before they jump into like a free-flowing ideation session. Or other people might want to make sure that they've explored different options before they jump into action and decision-making mode. So I think the most important thing to understand is that if everybody's aligned on the intent of the conversation, then that's going to make it a lot easier. But if there's a mismatch in terms of what folks are thinking that they're getting into, then there's going to be a lack of alignment and some tension. Um, and I will say that, sure, there are times when you may merge and, flow through all of these different conversation types in a single session. It's probably going to be with somebody you've already developed a rapport with, and when the scope is small enough. So an example might be, you've got a one-on-one with your manager and you want some advice on how to negotiate some project deadlines with some different stakeholders. And so you may kick off the meeting with connection, just a quick check-in to see how each of you are arriving in that moment, come together on, okay, what are we chatting about today? What are the challenges? Like, let's have a shared understanding here. Then you may move into, well, what are some different approaches or possibilities? And then you may land on, okay, here's a course of action, and this sounds like a good way to proceed. So I would say, again, using your judgment in terms of like the scope, the rapport that you have, and making sure both or all people involved in the conversation are on the same page in terms of what conversation type you're getting into. So I know I'm talking a lot. I want to hear from all of you. So we're going to launch a poll real quick, and I just love to get a sense from the room. Which of these conversation types feels the most comfortable to you, and then conversely, the most challenging for you? And it's okay if you feel comfortable in more than one. I would just say in terms of the the one that resonates or conflicts the most. Okay. So it's looking like connection is the most comfortable. Possibility is probably the least, or the most challenging or least comfortable. I mean, I guess we could ascertain that as the opposite of the number one, but not always the case that it's the opposite. And then action is, yeah, the also challenging for some folks. Um, or kind of in the middle, I guess. Action's more in the middle. Okay, well, this is great data just to kind of get a sense of where everybody is. Um, we're now gonna do a quick reflection individually. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to think about a recent conversation that you found challenging, and just kind of explore what happened, what made it hard, what might have made it easier. Maybe you can use some of the information that we talked about thus far around conversation types. Um, and I can give you an example if that's helpful. So, kind of following on from the previous example where I said, oh, I prefer to have rapport with somebody before jumping into sort of an exploratory possibility conversation. So let's just say I was invited last minute to an open discussion. Maybe it was about ideas to resolve an issue in the admissions process. I don't necessarily work in that department, but my manager couldn't go, and there's some tangential overlap, so then I was kind of thrown in the mix. And I show up. The expectation is to just dive right in, but ultimately, I don't feel comfortable or confident just kind of raising my hand and speaking up in a room full of strangers, and so I ended up, let's just say, not really sharing my ideas. But then later I regretted it because I felt like actually I had some really strong ideas. But the moment had kind of passed from when it felt appropriate to bring them up. And so in looking back, what might have made that easier, just kind of knowing, my preferences, maybe my manager could have actually briefed me or introduced me to the facilitator. Or maybe at the beginning of the meeting, there could have been an effort to just intro people who didn't know each other. So everybody was kind of on footing in terms of there was a personal connection. Or maybe even just having guidelines at the beginning to share that it's a safe space and there are no bad ideas, et cetera. So I've kind of thought about, moving forward, maybe I know how to better advocate for what I need, at least starting with my manager or in another session like this. So think of an example relevant to you. We'll give you a few minutes. I'll put on a little bit of background music and yeah, grab a Google Doc or notebook, whatever feels comfortable, and we'll kick it off now. All right. So wrap up your final thoughts. And now we're going to do a little bit of sharing. So again, breakout's optional. If you don't want to participate, you can stay in the main room. Lisa's going to share a little bit about how that works. But if you can, it would be great to jump into a group. You'll be with one or two other people. And the way it's going to work is really simple. We'll just, the person with the first name who's first alphabetically would be the first person to share. And just share anything that came up about the conversation that you jotted down, any insights that came up for you. And then the other folks in the room obviously bring curiosity and empathy, listen, ask questions, and provide feedback if that's welcome. And then do a quick debrief, just kind of talk about, what might the first person who shared do differently the next time around. And then we'll switch. And ideally everybody gets time to share. And we've got 10 minutes, so just make sure that you split the time within your room appropriately. And I'll let Lisa kind of share how the breakouts work and such.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. Okay. And yes, don't stress, and you don't have to leave if you don't want to do the breakout activity. Okay. We understand, you just might not be in the space to be able to share or talk. You can just hang out here in the main room. I will set up the groups. And then while I'm setting up the groups, I'm just going to be tracking that people are matched with at least one other person. So if I see that somebody's in a room by themselves for like 20 seconds, I will be moving you to another room. So just be patient. And then if somebody comes into your room with your group, please welcome them. And so you'll be roughly in groups of 2 to 3, 10 minutes total. So just divvy up the time. I also put the prompts into the chat. Any questions before we move into the activity? All right, here we go. Have fun. If you don't want to go into a breakout room, just don't join the room. And if you have any questions here in the main room, feel free to put them in the chat or just unmute yourself.
I can put the music back on for us in the main room. Lisa, you've got the breakout notifications and endings stuff, right?
Okay, everyone's back.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Love to hear a little bit for anybody who's willing to share just kind of what came up for you, any surprises, any insights. Feel free to jump off of mute. I feel like it's been very one way in mine, at least in the main room for me. So I'd love to hear some voices, but or if you have stuff in the you want to drop in the chat, it'd be great to just hear from a couple folks in a specific meeting. Oh, thanks. Sorry, Lisa.
No
Okay.
worries.
So, as we were just discussing, everybody has preferred ways of processing information, relating to the world, and these preferences show how we show up, shape how we show up in conversations, whether we're building a relationship, exploring possibility, or coordinating action. So, regardless of conversation type, we have our own styles. We'll go quickly through these, and then we'll do another deep dive reflection exercise. So, relational. Some of us tend to lead with empathy, emotional attunement, like to build trust. This supports psychological safety, it deepens relationships. But on the flip side, it might be accompanied by people pleasing or over indexing on keeping the peace, and not necessarily bringing your own needs forward. So that can be the catch with being relying too heavily on the relational style. There's another style called strategic, which is more of a big picture thinker, thinking about possibility pattern, the big long-term vision, really zooming out, which is great for generating creative solutions, ideating. But the flip side, because there's always a flip side, is living in this world may mean that you're not as comfortable with the details or the follow through or getting in the weeds with stuff. Um, Operational folks, however, love the execution. They love the detail. They love getting things done, moving things forward, and taking all of the tasks and steps and coordinating those to make sure that people are accountable, expectations are known, and that progress is being made. Flip side on the operational piece is if you live too much in execution mode, then you may miss some nuance within a conversation. You also may miss some emotional cues because you're kind of focused so much on moving things forward. And then lastly, we've got analytical communicators who are more data-driven, more logical, want to make sure that the facts are there, the accuracy is present, also thinking ahead about like risks and how to mitigate those. And analytical mindset can be great just in terms of like having the clarity, having the evidence. However, in some cases, an overly analytical communicator may be perceived as, overly critical, or detached. And so yeah, so those are at a high level the four. Just to kind of put it out there, there really are no right or wrong communication styles. It's more, again, just about awareness. Like, what's our own style? What's the style of others? How might that support or get in the way of a specific conversation, outcome, or intent? As well as just considering a team or an organization and the importance of creating diversity of style and perspective, to make sure we're not just operating from one mode. And in all likelihood, we're all able to flex a little bit across these different styles, even if it's learned versus like an innate way of being. But again, we're going to do a poll. I'd love to just kind of hear from the room. Which of these four feels the most like you? All right. So relational, ahead by a long game, which is not really surprising considering from a conversation type, the connection conversation was at the top. And then we've got kind of a split across the other styles. So I would say as we move into our next exercise, maybe think about, well, yeah, we'll think about an experience where maybe you were interacting with somebody who had a different style than you. So just kind of thinking ahead, planting a seed there. So before we do that, we're going to jump into a framework that can be used for pretty much any conversation. And the goal is to help you feel more prepared and more confident going in. And I'll give you an example to support this. So, for example, say I'm a mid-level team lead. I've been informally mentoring junior colleagues. I'd love to take on more leadership responsibilities, and I want to propose taking the lead on an upcoming cross-functional project. But I need my manager's support to do this. So I'm going to have a conversation with my manager, and the intent of the conversation is to express my interest in leading this project and gaining their buy-in. What's the conversation type? Well, because I'm exploring this new idea and I'm presenting this, and I want to gauge their openness, it's most likely a conversation for possibility. Not yet expecting a formal, yes or no or commitment. It's more exploratory. So in thinking ahead about my stakeholder that I'm engaging with, my manager in this case is more analytical. So what do they value? Logic, data, evidence, and thinking ahead in terms of like, what are the risks and how might I get ahead of them? So they're probably going to ask a lot of questions, get into the weeds, before they make a decision. So I just have that awareness in my head going in, and then I can think about, well, what might get in the way of success here? In terms of my style, say I'm more strategic. I like the big picture. I like the idea. I love this new project. I'm excited about, the outcomes and where it can go. And so my tendencies might be to just present the idea to my manager, but gloss over the logistics, or I just might assume, oh yeah, they get it. Like the value here is obvious. I might also get discouraged if they respond with a little bit of what seems like pushback or ask a lot of questions. And so how can I prepare for this? I can prepare some specifics. I can get those details that I might foresee my manager asking about. So whether that's readiness, like I can propose the data. I've in the past 3 quarters, I've mentored 4 team members, 2 are on a promotional path, or the strategic fit. This aligns really well with our Q4 objectives around cross-team efficiency, or I recognize the risk. I haven't done something of this scale before, but these are the things that I'm building into the schedule and accountability to make sure that we're ahead of the game with all that, etc. So I've got these in my back pocket. I can either choose to present them up front, or I can just respond as my manager asks me the questions. But I have a lot more preparation, knowing what style they have, and what conversation type this is, and what I'm getting into. And then ultimately, what's my desired outcome? What does success look like? So for me, it's that my manager sees the value in me taking on this role, asks thoughtful questions, considers it, and it ultimately is open to helping me move it forward. Because it's a conversation for possibility, I'm not expecting that the full decision has to come by the meeting, especially knowing that the person probably needs to get more of the lay of the land and soak in the details before that. So my expectations are set as like opening the door. Um, so that's a framework. I'd love in our next little bit for everybody to reflect on an upcoming conversation that you are going to have. It can be a work conversation. Could also be a personal conversation. And as I alluded to earlier, it'd be great if it's with somebody who is, if you're relational, it may be analytical or strategic or operational minded. And use this framework to just kind of flesh out some of the details around the conversation. And then we'll explore that in more detail in a little bit. So I'll give you, I think, probably about maybe up to 5 minutes now to reflect and just look at the timing, put on some music and kick that off. Yeah, perfect.
So yes, Pam, in answer to your question, this is some individual reflection time.
Sorry, I've got so many audio controls to come off of mute. Yeah, I think that's a great question, Pamela. And they certainly are related and they may actually end up being the same, but the intent is kind of like, why am I having this conversation? Whereas the outcome is like, what do I hope? What does success look like? So the intent may be like in the example before is like I want to broach this topic with my manager, and then success looks like that they're, open to the idea of me being the team lead. But there certainly is a lot of overlap. So I wouldn't overthink it.
You are gone. I'm so all alone.
All right. So let's wrap up our thoughts here. And once again, optional breakout room. No pressure, except this should be really fun and hopefully will kind of take this reflection that you did to the next level. We're going to actually do a role play of the conversation that you're going to have. So we're going to break into groups of two or three. And this time, the person with the shortest hair will start first as the conversation driver. And to start, just provide a quick overview of the situation. You don't have to get in the weeds. And also provide the stakeholder communication style. And so the next person, person two, will pretend to be that stakeholder. Obviously, they're not going to, you know, be the exact same person, but to the degree that they can, they'll at least embody the communication style and what might arise in the conversation to make it more difficult. And then if you have a third person in the room, pay attention, take some feedback, gather any insights, and then again, the three of you together debrief and share your takeaways. Switch through everybody in the room. This time we have a little bit more time. I think we have 20 minutes, a little over 20 minutes. And so again, split the time accordingly, and then we'll come back and see what came out of it. So again, if you want to stay in the large room, you can. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. And yeah, I'll let Lisa do her thing.
Okay, I just put the instructions in the chat. And again, you may be in groups of 2 to 3. So just divide your time accordingly. And if you are not, if you're in a room by yourself, just give me a minute and I'll move you into a room.
I can go in a chat room now. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, Mary.
Sorry about that.
That
Have you
is
done putting
absolutely
Lisa?
okay.
I'd like to go in a chat room too.
Okay, Pam, so Mary, you should just be able to join
Okay.
down at the bottom. If you click
Okay.
down at the bottom of your screen, it says join, and then Pam will move you into that room.
I see share, auto share. I don't see it. Bottom right? Oh, join. Okay.
Yes, join. There you go.
You are gone. I'm so all alone. Here's what's left of my happy home. She'll be back. That's what I say as I stare at the ceiling. Because I need you, baby. Oh, how I miss you, baby. Because I need you, baby. Oh, how I miss you, baby.
Some escape, some door to open. This path seems the blackest, but I guess it's the soonest, but there in the clearing I know you'll be wearing your young aching smile and waving your hand. Can't go with my heart when I can't feel what's in it. I thought you'd come over, but for some reason you didn't. Glass on the pavement under my shoe. Without you is all my life amounts to.
Nicole, I sent you a message.
A final sleep, no words from my cutting mouth to your ear, or tired wicked pinches from my fingers to your bitter face that I can't heal. I know tomorrow you will be somewhere in London, living with someone. You got some kind of family there to turn to, and that's more than I could ever give you. A chance for calm, a hope for freedom, outlet from my cold solitary kingdom, by the forest of our spring stay, where you walked away and left a bleeding part of me, empty and bothered, watching the water, quiet in the corner.
Probably do something a little more upbeat for the downtime. A little bit much. Let's switch to some instrumental. Hi, folks. Welcome back. So excited to hear anything that came out of the role play conversations. Anybody want to share what came up or what you noticed? Any shifts that you made as compared to, how you might approach a conversation normally?
We still have a few more people in rooms that are closing out their conversations.
Got
See you
it.
back
Thank you.
in 2 seconds.
Cool. Jump the gun.
Okay, everyone is back now.
Fabulous. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. Super excited to hear how that went. If anybody wants to jump off of mute, raise your hand or put in the chat. I'd love to kind of hear how that was for you. What'd you notice? What shifted, if anything?
And I'll go ahead and pause the recording once again.